All right, let's get started, everyone. Good morning, and thanks for joining. Welcome to the 2025 CLM Masterclass presented by CobbleStone Software. Thanks very much for taking time out of your day to join us this morning. My name is Tyler Holzer. I am the Training Department Manager at CobbleStone Software, and I'll sort of be emceeing this morning's event. Today, we're going to be exploring CobbleStone Software's award-winning contract lifecycle management software, CobbleStone Contract Insight. This morning's event is going to be led by CLM software experts through a series of system demonstrations in CobbleStone Contract Insight. I want to take us over to the agenda for this morning's event. First, we're going to have a contract lifecycle management software demo and Q&A. That's going to be led by Michael Donnelly. Then we're going to talk about AI, Wisdom Plus, auto redlining, clause replacement, and risk analysis. That's going to be led by Cameron Kay. Document collaboration and templates, and electronic signatures with James Linhart. And then post-execution, obligation and deliverables management, and searching and reporting with Kristen Riviello. At the end, we'll have some extra time if needed for closing remarks and additional Q&A. And we also sort of bake in some Q&A into each of these individual sessions. So while the first session and the last session are dedicated for Q&A, absolutely you can ask questions throughout, and there's usually 2 to 5 minutes at the end of each demo to ask your question specifically. Okay, so ask questions as we go. We do expect a good amount of people, so please ask your questions in the chat. All of the presenters who are not presenting will be there to diligently answer all of your questions. If there's anything we cannot answer, we'll find out and get back to you. If there's anything that we feel would be apt to show you, we'll tell the presenter at the end of their session and they can show you. Also, if you do have anything you specifically want to see, you could also just ask, right? Like, hey, I would love to see XYZ. Feel free to ask. Okay, that's always on the table if there's time in the session. Okay. A member of the CobbleStone team is going to be following up with you shortly. If you're not already in contact with an account manager, they'll be following up. You'll see back on our intro slide here that you can scan that code at the bottom left for a personalized demo, but someone would be following up for a one-on-one demonstration. We certainly offer personal one-on-one demonstrations with your team. We offer a free 30-day trial, and an account manager, if you're not already connected with one, can really help with anything else you need if you're evaluating for a contract lifecycle management solution. Okay. And the last thing I want to say for now, before I pass over to Michael Donnelly, is that we are recording this event, and we're going to process the recording later on today. We should get it to you early next week, so take a look out for that. So if you do have to step out for any reason today, you want to share it with some colleagues, you are more than welcome to, okay? This is being recorded. All right. Well, that's it for me for now. I want to pass over to Mike Donnelly to kick us off with the contract lifecycle management demo and Q&A. Thanks very much for joining, everyone. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Tyler. Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. As Tyler mentioned, I'll be covering a high-level understanding of the lifecycle tools that our system offers, kind of cradle-to-grave approach to a contract. On this session, I will be able to address any questions that I can show realistically in the time frame that we have. And then, of course, as Tyler mentioned, we have some time booked out for the end of this session to just address questions kind of rapid fire if necessary. Today, I'll be showing two different scenarios. I'll be showing a scenario where we are drafting an agreement and getting that reviewed and approved and ultimately signed. And then I'm also going to be showing a different scenario where we can imagine that I was sent a contract from a third party and how we can get that up and running into the system. That's going to be through use of our Wisdom AI tool. The session I'll be doing is going to be going through the out-of-the-box Wisdom Basic, as the session afterwards is going to dive in a little bit more detail about some potential premium options called Wisdom Plus. But I started sharing my screen, and the first thing that we'll do before diving into the actual system itself is take a look at some background about CobbleStone as a company, just so you kind of understand who we are in the market and our presence in general. So CobbleStone was founded in 1995, and we were actually one of the first, if not the first company to provide an off-the-shelf contract management software. So what this means is we're leaders in the industry through use of our unlimited user-defined fields, contract types, departments, workflows, alerts, and much more. The system that we're going to be looking at primarily today is called the Enterprise Edition of Contract Insight. It's our flagship product. But for smaller deployments, or those of you who just are looking for a system for maybe just you and one other person, we do offer smaller deployment options with our Express and Workgroup editions if necessary. But at this point, CobbleStone is selected by over 1,000 clients with even more thousands of users spanning both the private and public sector. Just last year alone on our SaaS offerings, our clients managed over 4 million records using our solution. The reason I say SaaS offerings is because we do also offer a deployed option. If you're looking for a more perpetual license to be hosted on site, your servers, that is an option for you. When it comes to feedback we hear from our clients, it's mostly going to be tied to the user friendliness and the flexible features that we offer. We'll definitely be getting a sense of this today. On our SaaS offering, regarding uptime, we offer a 99.9% uptime guarantee. And somewhat recently, we enhanced the system with some AI tools called Wisdom, which I was referencing earlier, which we're going to be taking a look at today. And in order to stay abreast of the current contract management software practices and just how the software should be delivered, we have to maintain a very active commitment to the organizations that we see on the screen here, such as the National Contract Management Association, the Association of Corporate Counsel. And not only are we proud to say that we're members of the Credit Union Executive Society, they're also clients of ours, so they use Contract Insight to manage their contracts. On the left, we have a number of accolades that we've garnered over the past. We have an open rating on Dun & Bradstreet. We have an A+ rating in the Better Business Bureau. And in the center, we're going to be looking at some hopefully familiar brand names and logos. These are tools that we have integrated with in the past. Our system does offer an open API backend architecture, allowing it to be very easily integrated with tools that we see here or tools that you might be using otherwise. And if you're often on the go, you need to get a status report, you need to sign a contract, or just in general, a report overall. We do also offer a mobile application available on the Android and Apple app stores. And every feature that we see today will be accessible through the mobile application. So if you're working remotely, just not at your desk or whatever it might be, you can always leverage this tool to just get that status update that you might need if it's urgent. But we're going to go ahead and dive right into the system now and go through those scenarios. All right, so what we're looking at right now is the login page of Contract Insight. And in case you wanted to brand this screen, you can add your logo, change the background, change the messages on the left to whatever you'd like. So as soon as you hit the login page, it could look like a homegrown system. In order to access the system, you're going to need a username and password along with an active user license. And if you wanted to bypass this screen, we do also offer single sign-on options. So if you're using that with other tools, you can leverage that here as well. Now, I'll be playing a few different roles on today's call, be it a requester, a legal reviewer, an administrator, but I will be logging in under a single account, which is going to be that system admin. Now, as an admin, what I can do for my other users is give them specific permissions based on their role. So requesters should only be requesting. They shouldn't be approving anything. I can easily achieve that with permissions. A few other things I wanted to get by before we actually log in here is if you like what you see today, we do offer a free 30-day trial of the system. So if you're the type of team to try things before you make decisions, that's absolutely something that we can support. And for our Enterprise Edition, we offer an unlimited amount of read-only user licenses. So for those of you on the call who are expecting a pretty wide deployment, but most of these users are probably just going to be accessing the system to get those status updates or to read a contract, but not really approve or request anything, we can accommodate for those types of users for no additional charge. So we're going to go ahead and log in. And the first screen we'll be seeing upon login will be a dashboard. And there's actually a few different types of dashboards that you can apply to a user. If I have the permissions, I can build my own dashboards, or if I'm a system admin, I can assign certain dashboards to certain people. So that way I can make sure that what they're looking at is what I want them to see. Now, there's two different types of dashboards that can be applied to a user. The one in front of us is called a graphical dashboard. And overall, graphical dashboards are really nice for that high-level understanding of a lot of information at once. There's 10 that come out of the box, and you can choose whichever one you're happy with. I really like the one in front of us just because it provides a full system summary, just kind of across the board what's going on. So I have the volume of contracts on the left there and some other things. I have a nice pie chart in the center that breaks out every single contract, how many I have overall, and how many are in each status. So a really nice idea of a pipeline throughout the entire system. And then we have contracts by departments on the right, a nice way to kind of digest the workload each team might have. But like I said, these graphical dashboards, there's 10 of these that come out of the box. You can choose whichever one you're happy with. In my opinion, I think they're really useful for those read-only users who just need that information, or potentially a system admin who just wants a high-level piece of information before going anywhere else. If you are looking for a more actionable dashboard, we have a different style called just a standard. And I'll load that one up in a second here. These consist of tiles, which are right in front of us, and the docs below them. And let's zoom in a little bit so it's a little bit more obvious. So when building a standard dashboard, you choose the tiles up top and the docs below. When it comes to the tiles, there's actually two different types of tiles you can apply to a dashboard. The top row here are called action tiles, and they act as shortcuts anywhere inside or outside the system. So I really like these because no matter what level of user you are, you can get a lot of use out of them. So for example, if I'm an admin and I do a lot of configuration, I don't want to go through the main menu and click a bunch of buttons to get through these to get to these screens. Instead of doing all of that, I can just build a tile to jump me right there as soon as I log in a single click. Great for an admin. But what about an end user? Well, an end user really just wants accessibility and that user friendliness. So I have an example of a perfect example of a tile that they could use, add contract. Adding contract isn't anything crazy. I just go through the main menu and choose add contract record. But if I'm a brand new user, I was just hired yesterday and I'm expected to start adding contracts to the system. If I log in and see a big button in my face that says add contract, it's pretty safe to assume I know exactly where to go. So it provides that user friendliness as well. Now the bottom row here are a little different. These are called summary tiles. The way these work is they connect to reports in the system, and they can summarize the info within that report in a few different ways, providing totals, minimums, maximums, averages, and counts. If I need some full detail about the report, I can go ahead and click into these tiles, but these are really reserved for, or used, I should say, for that high-level quick understanding. Now, below my tiles is my calendar, and the calendar is a really nice hub, if you will, of really every action that needs to be taken for you. You can call it a to-do list if you'd like. But the reason I'm saying this is because every single alert is going to be placed on your calendar automatically. Now, these alerts can be a number of things. They could be a task alert telling you to get the contract out for signature, to review a contract, but they can also just be more generic key date alerts like expiration dates, renewal dates, termination notice dates. And every single time or day that we see a taskbar here begin or end, on those days, we're also going to be sent out an email. So even if we're not logging in absolutely every single day and looking at our calendar, we're still going to be kept up to date with what's happening in the contract system. Now, beyond just the alert from an email, from the calendar, you also have a bell icon in the top right. I probably should clean up. I have quite a lot here. But we have a lot of different methods on to be alerted. And it is worth noting that all three of these methods that I'm mentioning also provide the user with a direct link to the agreement that sent the alert. What I'm saying here is, if I get an email a second ago that says, hey, Mike, you need to do a legal review on this contract, I don't need to go into my shared drive or my Excel spreadsheet, scroll up a bunch of times and find that contract and start getting to work. I'll be brought to the record itself directly through the link immediately where I need to be. So no wasted time at all. Really, really great way to just make sure that things are moving along smoothly. Now, beneath my calendar is a report, a full report. This is something that those tiles above could have potentially connected to. And I always say that this is a pretty basic report, just all contracts just broken down by their value. However, I could have chosen a much more involved report if I wanted to be brought onto my dashboard. Regardless of the report I choose, no matter how simple or involved it might be, I can export the results to Excel, filter the results down further if necessary, and dive into each individual contract record using the view link on the left. Now, when building reports, something else I can mention is you're not limited to what contract detail field you would like to report off of. All of these that we have in front of us are really just out of the box fields. But when it comes to the fields themselves, you have complete control as a system admin of what fields are applicable to which types of agreements. So I can create any number of fields I want. And as soon as I add a field to the system, that doesn't mean I'm just adding a new piece of information to look at. I'm also opening up other opportunities for things like reporting. Now let's go ahead and go through those scenarios. The first one I wanted to show all of you today is going to be the drafting scenario. I'm looking to get into a contract with a company. We're going to be the one drafting, and they're going to be reviewing our paper. From the main menu, I'll choose Add Contract Record. And the first step I'll be taking in this case is defining the type of agreement I'm looking to go ahead and draft and get up and running. Now let's take a moment and look at this list here. I have a pretty exhaustive list of options. I'm sure some of these options might be applicable to your team. Some of them you might never expect to use once, but that's not going to be a problem. Through the user interface, you're going to be able to completely configure this list to meet your needs. So you can remove the types of agreements that don't apply. If you don't see one existing that you need, you can always go ahead and add that. There's no programming or coding involved with configuration in our system. It's all very plug and play. And the reason that you choose the type first is because depending on the type of agreement, that's going to be judging what information you're looking to track on it. I can imagine that you're probably not going to be tracking a dollar figure associated with your NDAs. So when you're entering an NDA, you won't be bothered by a field asking you for that. One last thing I can mention about this list is it's configurable at the universal level across the board in your system, but it can also be configured in a more team or permission-based level. So what I mean by that is, let's say we have a couple of users who only should really be working on NDAs in the system. When they open up this list, they're only going to be seeing one option. Whereas you system admins, when you open up the list, you're going to be seeing a dozen or 24 different types of options, all into the same system, all boiled down to permissions. So for today's drafting example, I'll choose consulting agreement and we'll continue. So keep in mind all the fields that we see here, I've assigned to the consulting agreement contract type. If I felt like some of this information was unnecessary, no problem, I can unassign that. If I felt like some information was missing, I can always go ahead and add that field and assign it to whichever type is applicable. So we're going to go ahead and fill in some main detail here. And I'll be focusing on the more significant fields, starting with counterparty name. Now, counterparty name is, of course, going to be the company that you're working with, and you can do an import of these company names if necessary. You can add them one by one after the fact. CobbleStone provides services to do imports for you if needed. These are going to be your employees and your departments. These are a driving factor of permissions. So if I'm not the employee assigned to a record, if I'm not part of the department the record or contract is associated with, I may not have access to this record based on my permissions. Now, I also wanted to point out the status field. This is going to be playing a very large role in today's demo and likely a pretty large role in your systems in general. So the reason this is important is because I've set up a workflow process in my demo system that tells me exactly what I need to be doing with a contract if it's submitted under this request status. A workflow is going to start off to get the contract drafted, approved, negotiated, and signed. And it's all because it's the status of request. But really the way workflow works is field conditions, if-then statements essentially. If the contract's on request, then do this workflow. But we're not limited to just status. We're not limited to just request. We can really use a combination of any of these fields that we see in front of us, even fields you've created yourselves, to start up these workflow processes. So for example, maybe it's not just a request, but it's a consulting agreement under request, and it's under the legal department, and it's $100,000 or more worth in value. If all of these are factors into saying who it needs to go to or what processes we need to follow to get this contract up and running, we can use any combination of these fields and their own conditions to start up workflows. So really, at the end of the day, we're just going to be plugging in the information in an established system. We don't need to make these decisions anymore. The system's going to be doing that for us, which is really, really great. Kind of, once again, if I'm a brand new user hired yesterday, I don't need to know all the nuanced processes that we follow. I'm just plugging in the information as I see fit. The system's going to be taking care of it. Now, before we move on to the next screen, some other fields that are going to be very important to everybody are going to be the date fields. These play a very big role in terms of alerts. So let's say we're going to try to get this contract signed by May, and it's going to be a 1-year-long agreement. So when May comes around next year, we'll receive an email letting us know the contract is expiring. Probably too late, though. We might need to send that termination notice. We might want to confirm renewal. So that's not the only alert you'll be receiving. On the next screen, when we go through our workflow process, that's going to be another source of an alert, or several alerts, really. But before workflow is even at play here, we have a few more alerts to look out for just in the main details. Contract notify days is the number of days prior to the expiration date. You'll be getting another alert. So this is great for those termination notices, a heads up. And an annual review date here is going to be yet another alert, except in this case, it's a chosen date. So if I wanted one halfway through the term, let's say, I'll just plug it in November. But now that the main detail has been filled out, we can save and continue, and this is going to be building us our contract record, which is essentially like the home page of this contract that we're working on. It's going to hold all the information that we just submitted and offer us some other tools. Now, what we'll see here is there's a task waiting for me, and then there's a message up top saying that a file was attached to the record. So what I would really recommend, or what I should say, I really would expect of everybody when you're using a more established system, you yourself is established, is whenever you come to a contract record, you're probably asking yourself, what do I need to do right now? And that's going to be answered going into the task section. So what we'll see is there's a task waiting for me called prepare for review. I didn't add this task right now, but keep in mind, I met the workflow conditions. It's going to be telling me exactly what I need to be doing based on what information I've given the system. And prepare for review specifically, I like to keep pretty vague just because I'm sure there's a lot of different initial processes that have to come into play for everybody on the call today before legal does a true review of the agreement. So we got to notice, though, that the file was drafted. And let's take a quick glance at that document. So automatically, as soon as I entered in this record, a contract was drafted. This was using a template I've added to my system. Now, the template we're going to be looking through today is an example document. For those of you who have a number of boilerplates on your team already, you can easily leverage them in your system. You can just define exactly what information needs to feed into that document and then use that template just moving forward in general. So let's take a quick look at this document here. I'll just be opening it up in Word. And what else I do is I want to go ahead and compare it side by side with the template I used itself. So that way we can see exactly what the system just did for us and what a final product, or at least a final or a rough draft, could look like. But bear with me while Word launches here. Word's being a little combative with me today. Bear with me. There we go. Right. Okay, so on the right side of my screen, we're going to be seeing the, boy, give me 1 second. Word is getting a little crazy on me. All right, so on the right side of my screen, we're going to be seeing the document that was just drafted a second ago. Having trouble opening up the template now, but let's just go back into that document in general. We'll wait for that on the left to load. But what we'll see is some pretty familiar information on the left or on the right here. We see consulting agreement, the contract type. We see the proposed effective date of May 1st. We see the counterparty that we've chosen for this record. So when the system is drafting us agreements, the system can simply grab information from the record itself and pull them into a Word document for you. This is going to make your life a lot easier just because instead of having to open up that file and find these highlighted sections and plug in that data yourself, the system is just going to be doing that for you. Something else I can mention is, as we'll notice, there's an address that's been pulled in. Now, I never filled in an address. The system just grabbed the company's address from their associated record and pulled that in for us. So we're not limited to data that we've just touched. We're not limited to data that we just entered. This information can be fetched from other areas of the system. And I am running into issues with the template itself. Let me see one more time if I can open it. If not, we can move on. But something that's really great about the template tool is we can also leverage clauses from our clause library. All right, now we got it. Let's do this. All right, so on the left, what we'll see in all those areas are placeholders, essentially the same idea as your highlighted sections. But I wanted to point your attention to these longer placeholders towards the center of the screen for identification, confidentiality, and reimbursement of expenses. Now, I definitely didn't touch any fields with these names, but on the right in those sections, those are replaced by entire clauses. These clauses came from an internal clause library that the system offers. The intended use here is you're going to be plugging in your standard language into that clause library. And when it comes to drafting agreements, you can actually apply rules to these placeholders to pull in the clauses when only necessary. This same kind of concept doesn't just apply to your small paragraph style clauses like we're having in front of us, but this can also apply to things like supporting documentation, entire exhibits, or additional pages of a file. So this kind of enhances the template tool into from a more basic option to a more document assembly tool. We have clients who've combined upwards to 50 documents all in a package, all automatically and all based on rules. Maybe 10 of those pages are omitted if a certain condition isn't met. So this is a major, major time saver for those of you who typically draft your own contracts. But we're back in the system, and I think we can say that we've prepared for review. But if we need to also provide a certificate of insurance, let's say, or a supporting document in general before legal gets involved, I can just drag and drop that right into the system. We offer unlimited storage for every single contract record in the system, as well as the ability to upload any type of document. Word docs, PDFs, Excel spreadsheets, does not matter. And now I think I can safely say I've prepared for review. Legal can go ahead and take a look at the contract. So what I'll tell the system is I'm done here. I'll approve. Now I don't need to call anybody or email anybody to get this contract moving. What we'll see here is the status has been pushed from request to legal review. So anytime anybody runs a report or looks for this contract, they're going to understand exactly where the status is, even if I didn't tell them directly. But not only is the status going to be updating, it's going to move throughout its life cycle automatically. Because what we'll see here is if I dive into tasks, Connie Brown is now involved. Connie Brown, any moment now, will receive an email, a calendar event in case she misses that email, a bell icon on the top right. And all of these, once again, are going to provide her with a direct link to be brought right to the screen. So no wasted time at all. Things are moving along accordingly. At the micro level, people are just doing their job, doing their individual tasks. And at the macro level, everybody is going to understand where this contract is because of that status update. So I'll be playing the role of Connie Brown real quick. Let's take a closer look at this agreement. And before we send it out to the third party, let's potentially make some changes. We're going to go ahead and open up the documents page one more time. This time, I could just download the file to Word, no problem at all. But if I wanted to kind of keep the theme of staying in the system, what I can do is open up the online editor. So we took a lot of inspiration from Word when it comes to this online editor, so you'll probably get familiar with this tool in no time at all. But the really nice thing about this tool here is track changes are forced. Now, I know this is an internally drafted agreement, so we're probably going to want to clean it up before we get it out to the third party, but that is a really nice option just because it's always kind of annoying to click a few times to get that track changes on. But we can remove language like I just did. We can add language manually just by typing. And if I wanted to refer to that clause library a little bit more directly or manually, I can always go ahead and click this CobbleStone tab and add a clause. And this way it's just the drop down menu and I can just go ahead and click add. Now, any changes made in this tool, any comments made in this tool is going to be seen in Word and vice versa. So when I send this out to the third party, if it had red lines, they're going to be seeing that. And if they mark it up even further, I open it up in the online editor, I'll be seeing them as well. That way, we're not risking anything when we're sending out to the third party, but even internally, if someone just has a preference, I just want to stick with Word. I've been using it for 20 years, no problem at all. You're not going to get any lost functionality because of that preference. Now, before we go ahead and say this is good to go ahead and send to the third party, we're going to go ahead and clean this up, and we're going to save a copy. That doesn't mean that we're overwriting or deleting the original. We're going to be given a second copy of the consulting agreement. And on the right, we'll notice that we have a new version number. We offer full version control when it comes to editing these files. But all right, Connie Brown is happy with her review. She's going to go ahead and approve that as well. Now, before we move on, I just wanted to point out that today's workflow is going to be a pretty perfect world scenario, which is going to be approve, approve, approve. But obviously, not every single process you'll be running into is going to be so perfect. There's going to be times for rejection or other things. So you're not just limited to just approving a task. If I were to reject it, this could outright cancel out the whole contract. It could go back a step. And it doesn't necessarily have to be red light, green light. If we have a different scenario, maybe I can't exactly approve it right now, but I don't want to reject it yet. I can have as many other options as I want. On hold, and it goes into a different direction. I need more information. It goes into a fourth direction. We have a lot of flexibility when it comes to a workflow process. But like I said, we're going to keep that perfect world and approve it. And now we're given the green light to send this out to the counterparty. So how do we get contracts out of the system? I'll be showing you a more out-of-the-box option on how to get a contract out. Later on today, when we talk about document collaboration, that's going to be a more system-driven negotiation as opposed to just emails. However, I do think the out-of-the-box email function is very valuable because every single contract record has this, what I call an email hub. And what we're able to do here is we can send emails out directly from the system. A file can be attached to that email and sent out to any valid email address you'd like. And if I click send new email, it's going to pop up the most appropriate right here, my main contact at this company. Now, why is this tool so valuable? It just seems like a basic email tool. And you'd be right. But the really nice value about this is if they were to reply, the third party, to reply to that email that you sent from the system and upload a new copy of the contract to that email, automatically, what's going to happen is the email itself will be caught in this queue, and the files themselves will be automatically uploaded to the files and attachment section of this contract record. So what this means is really all communication related to this contract could potentially be in a single spot. There's no need to having to scout through our entire email inbox to find any communication regarding this. It's all going to be caught right here. There's no need for me to fetch that document from the email, pull back into the system, because it's automatically going to be done for me. So this is a major, major boon to everybody's processes, just because I know you're probably like me, where if you're going through your Outlook email, for example, it can be a major headache. So being able to just kind of find solace in a single area for every single communication related to the contract is kind of priceless to me. But let's imagine I've sent the counterparty the contract, and I get back a PDF. That's all. I just get a single file. It's a PDF, and the email says, looks good, sign it. Probably not my favorite scenario. I probably want to reach out and say, hey, can I get that Word version? It's Friday. I don't want to have to waste my time going up and down 60 pages of red lines, comparing it to your PDF. So what we're going to be able to do in the event this happens, of course, because keep in mind, if it was just sent in Word, I'll just be able to open up that online editor and see those red lines anyway. But if it were sent in PDF format, I don't need to reach out and say, can I get that Word version? I can go ahead and upload the PDF that I just received. And what I'm going to be able to do here is actually compare the Word document I shared with them with the PDF that they just returned. I'm going to compare these two files. And I'll admit the example I'll be showing today, there's quite a lot of differences between the two. But this comparison tool offers word-to-word comparison, PDF to PDF comparison, and in this case, Word to PDF comparison. So I call this like a fail-safe. In the event that this happens, you can always use this, keep it in your back pocket type tool. But we'll notice if we scroll down a little bit, there are some shared areas. It's basically a completely different document. So really nice way to avoid having to waste your time waiting for that Word document to come back in. But once we're happy with that, despite the changes, let's say that we're okay with them, we are going to approve the counterparty review. And now this contract's going to be flagged to be ready to send for signature. Now, sending for signature on our system is extremely simple, and the approach that we're going to be taking on today's call is going to be through our proprietary electronic signature tool called IntelliSign. And just because I see a question in the chat, Kathy asks, is the system compatible with Google Docs? So if you are not a fan of the online editor, we do also offer connections with Word 365 or Office 365 really, and Google Drive. So in that case, if I were to open this file, I can click, well, in this case, it's edit document in Microsoft Word because my system is connected to that, but I also have an option to connect to a Google Cloud app drive like Google Drive as well. So that way, it's going to pull me into Google Drive. I can make my edits there, and once I save it, it's going to be brought right back into the system. Just wanted to address that question because it was a pretty quick one. So let's get this contract out for signature. Let's just get this PDF signed. We're going to open up this document toolbox once again, and I'll choose e-sign document. Now, in the event that some of you may be using DocuSign or Adobe Sign or something that we don't see right here called Sign Now, potentially, if you use any of those three tools, with our Enterprise Edition, we do offer complementary connectors to those tools, so you can leverage that functionality for no additional charge in your system. For those of you who are looking for an e-signature tool, but you're not currently using one, you can always use CobbleStone and IntelliSign. Now, when setting this up, you can define if you want freeform signing where they can sign anywhere. Alternatively, we can use placeholders if necessary. This is probably more useful if there's a ton of signers to be putting their signature down on a file. We'll stick with freeform for today and save. And then I'm going to have to set up my recipients. Who is signing? Now, I can do this in a few ways. I can just type in a name and email. I can choose from a list of company contacts or employees. I'll just do external signer. And I'm going to go ahead and invite my company contact here, Tom Don. And I can continue adding people as I see fit. I can change the order in which they will receive this invitation to sign. But what else I can do is, let's say we have a pretty standard process to follow. The counterparty signs first, then our CFO signs, then our CEO signs, and that's it. If we wanted to set up these more predetermined processes, that's totally possible with this same add-on module. Today, I'm doing a more one-off approach. But let's go ahead and start this process. This page will refresh, and invitations are going to come into my inbox. So first, I'll be playing the role of a third party, a non-user of the system. So I'm Tom Don, the company contact. I just received this email, and right now it is just defaulted branded to CobbleStone. If you wanted to brand this with your own logo, just so there's a little bit more peace of mind on the third party, no problem. But what Tom is going to do here is just simply click the sign your document link, and that will bring him into the portal to actually sign the file. We're going to see a nice preview of the file. We can go down to the signature block and drag and drop our signature down from the left. Now, when signing, we can do it in a few different ways. We can type our signature. We can potentially upload an image if we'd like, or we can draw. Drawing is really nice if you're using that mobile app. We're going to stick with just typing, adopt the signature. And if we think it looks good, we can move it if needed, and we can accept and finalize. Now, the really nice thing about this signature tool is there's no other action necessary when it comes to the system, because automatically, when we return back to the record that we started all this on, that signed copy is going to be waiting for us in the files and attachments section. So I don't need to go ahead and find that signed copy and upload it back. It's going to be done for me. Finally, we can go back to task and emails. We can approve the send for signature just to confirm receipt. And workflow doesn't necessarily have to stop once the contract's signed. In this case, we have 2 additional steps that potentially need to be taken in the future, 30 days until review date, just a heads up for a review. We also have confirm renewal. But when it comes to these post-execution workflow processes, of course, they can be used to notify a user of certain deliverables, certain obligations that must be met, potentially any quarterly reviews of a contract performance. But I wanted to take a moment to talk about this confirm renewal option. Just because, as we'll see, next year, the system is going to give me about a couple months heads up that I need to confirm renewal. Are we renewing this agreement? So let's say that this time along comes around and I say, you know what, we're going to go ahead and renew it. We'll approve that task. Contract still active. The expiration or renewal date has been pushed out a year now. So now this won't show up in any contracts expiring in the next 60 days reports, if it was within 60 days. And if we go back into testing emails, we'll see essentially a duplicate of that confirm renewal for the following year. And we can continue doing this over and over and over again until potentially we reject this task and then a new task could roll on to say prepare termination notice or whatever it might be. So we can have a lot of control, nothing else falling through the cracks. I'm sure many of you on the call have essentially forgotten that you need to send a termination notice and then you're stuck for another term. That could be kind of a thing of the past using a workflow like that. So let's do a reset here. Let's imagine we've just logged in, and this time we have a contract waiting for us in our inbox. We want to get that into the system. What is the step we take in that case? So let's imagine I have been sent a software agreement. I'm just going to pull it over from my other screen. It's just a Word document. I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop it right into the system. Now keep in mind, this process is using our Wisdom AI tool, the basic option. This is going to be coming out of the box with really all 3 versions of our system. The session after this, we're going to be diving into more AI functionality related to our premium model called Wisdom Plus. So if you're very interested in that, then we can always go ahead and take a look at that as well. So the first thing that's going to be asked of me is what type of record am I looking to create with this file? Now, of course, it is going to be a contract, so we'll choose that. In this case, I'll also define the type of agreement that was just brought in, which will be a software agreement. And we'll continue. And we're going to be presented with a few different options immediately here. What we'd like to do here. So I brought in a Word document. So I'm just going to go ahead and choose the first option of use MS Word text. But if this were a scanned PDF, for example, what I can do is I can OCR this file to leverage all the AI after the OCR has been completed. If it were a smaller document, I'd probably choose this option. If it were a much larger scanned PDF, I'd probably want to queue the OCR. That way I can just get a notification once it's finished. We're going to use the first option here. This page is going to refresh. On the left side of my screen, we're going to be seeing a preview of the file, which we can copy and paste out of if necessary. It's just an Adobe previewer. And on the right, we're going to be looking at some similar data fields that we looked at earlier, but this time, some information has been filled out for us. So we see the title's been added, the counterparty name's been identified and filled out. We can see term, identification, and warranty were extracted in fields for us for ease of viewing. We can consider these high priority clauses, if you will, but we're not limited to just these three. We can really use any common clauses that we can think of. And effective and expiration date were also grabbed and pulled into a system field for us. So if we're typically filling in, let's say 10 fields, we can already see that more than half the work's already done. In fact, the only thing I really need to touch in this case is this required field. Will company need access to confidential data? This can very much streamline the process of getting a contract record entered when you were sent the contract. But beyond just extracting information in the fields for you, what else this Visit in Basic option allows you to do is take a closer look at the clauses that the system identified. It's going to break out each identifiable clause into its own little box and provide us with some other options. So for example, I can add this language here to training data. What this is going to be doing is it's going to be taking all of this language and associating with payment terms. That way the system is going to be a lot more reliable moving forward to find that particular language. Instead of doing that, what else we could do is add it to our clause library. And we've seen clients use this option in a few different ways. If you wanted to add it to your clause library just to leverage in your own agreements, you easily can. But what else I've seen clients do is they've added to the clause library and maybe denoted it with the company name. That way, for future contracts, what they can do is leverage the similar clauses options. And by default, or I shouldn't say by default, but usually you could compare their contract term to yours. But if you wanted to compare this particular company's clause with another company you may have negotiated with last year, you can leverage it that way as well. And then we also have the option to create a task manually, which includes those notifications that we've been talking about throughout today's call. And at first glance, I'll admit this seems like a pretty basic function, but I really like this because let's say we're really established in the system. We have workflows doing all the work for us. There's always going to be a scenario that's a little off the beaten path, a curveball, if you will. Hey, I just want someone else to take a quick look at this particular language just because I'm not too used to the way it's written. So I have a lot of control over more one-off tasks as well. Oh, I accidentally clicked reset, but if we wanted to, instead of just comparing clauses, we just wanted to outright redline them immediately, what else we can do here is leverage the clause replacement option. This is going to give us that comparison side by side, but this time I can go ahead and check off options that I want to redline. So this way I can kind of get the non-negotiables out of the way pretty quickly before we get into the actual workflow and approval of a contract. Now, before we open the floor for Q&A, I wanted to close out by showing you the searching and reporting capabilities of the system. And I'll be kind of building up from this most straightforward to the more involved search methods. Most straightforward is definitely going to be the search bar at the top of every single screen. This is called quick search. And the really nice thing about this is you don't have to specify anything at all. You just type in a string of text. I type in a word, but you can type in a string of text. And this search method is going to be looking within all fields and all files uploaded to the system. So I'm given 254 results. If this was a little bit more than I bargained for, I can always go ahead and filter the options down further. If I'm not really a fan of the columns that we see here to filter, not a problem. I can change the columns to whatever I'd like. But like I said a moment ago, this is going to be looking within fields and files. And the real value behind this is, I think the example that we have in front of us is a great example. Identification. It's such a common piece of language in a file that you're usually looking at. So having a field dedicated to identification, now I know I do, but that might feel a little redundant to some of you. So still being able to search for the word identification, filter on the more unique information about the contract, and then dive into the files themselves to find that language is extremely valuable. Just because I don't need to waste time filling out 800 fields to find every little bit of detail of every contract. When I preview this file, I know it's a little tiny, but when I preview this file, it's going to point me exactly where on that particular contract the word is found. So really nice for those common clauses or common terms that might feel redundant to hold within a field. Now, if you're asking yourself a little bit more of a direct question, how many contracts are assigned to me? How many contracts are under legal review? In that case, you're probably going to want to just simply do a simple search. When I find and search contracts in this method, it's going to first immediately provide me with every single contract in the system that I have permissions to view. If I was looking for everything under legal review, I'm just filtering status name. I have 65 results. Here are all the contracts under that particular status. But if we're looking for something a little bit more niche, we can open up this drop-down menu, and this provides us with a list of every contract detail field that we can add. And this applies to any field whatsoever. I mean, for example, I have this field I did for a demo to a Ben a long time ago. If I wanted to add a field called Ben's field and search for contracts where it says yes, no, or maybe, I had that option. Like I said in the very beginning of today's call, if we add a brand new field to the system, we're not just looking for at a new piece of data. We're opening the floor for reporting, searching, workflows, and a lot more. Now, if you do the same search, let's say 5 or 6 times a day, starting to get pretty repetitive, you always apply a few filters to it. What's always recommended in that case is to build a report. And then you could put that report onto your dashboard. So the thing that you spend so much time searching for becomes the very first thing that you see when you log in. Now, every time you run a report or see it on your dashboard, it's giving you the most up-to-date information in the system. If you wanted to export this to share it externally, no problem at all. If you are more of that visual learner, you can create a chart out of this data. And the really nice thing about reports, or a little bonus, is you can actually set up an automated email schedule. So if you wanted to send out an email, let's say to your CEO who's asking for a report every Monday that says, let me see contracts that are expiring this week. Instead of having to put that together and send your CEO that report every Monday, maybe it takes an hour out of your day with your Excel spreadsheets. With the tool here, we can set up our CEO as an employee in the system. In fact, they don't even need to be a user. We can assign that CEO, start it up next Monday, fire it off every week. And the way this is provided to those individuals will be an Excel spreadsheet as an attachment to the email. So this is an amazing way to get information into people's hands without even asking them to log in. And you could be a hero for saving you some time and money. So that's typically what I like to cover on this session. But we have about, it's okay if we go over a little bit, but we got 5 minutes left of this session. Please, if you have any questions on anything that we saw today, I'd be more than happy to address them. If I can realistically show you that method or answer the question in the time that we have, I'd be more than happy to do so. So please feel free to fire away. No need to be shy.
Does anyone have any questions for Mike? Okay. If not, Mike might be able to wrap up your Q&A a little early.
Sure, and don't hesitate to put questions into the chat throughout the other sessions. We'll have a number of resources on the CobbleStone side to address them. But if we don't have any questions now, I just wanted to thank everyone again for the time this morning. Hope you enjoy the next sessions that we have coming up. And yeah, I'll go ahead and sign off, but I appreciate everyone's time. Oh, it looks like Vanessa has a question. Feel free to put it into the chat.
All right. Well, I guess Vanessa, if you have a question or anyone else, please feel free to put it in the chat and we can answer it from here. But let's move on ahead. Thank you very much, Mike, for the contract lifecycle management demo. Next up, let's take a quick 5-minute break, and then we are going to pick up with our AI demonstration this morning with Cameron Kay. Cam, feel free to just pick up in 5. Thank you.
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Cam Kay, a member of the sales operations team here at CobbleStone. And we will be going through some of the more advanced AI features for this portion of the presentation. Namely our Wisdom Plus, which is our add-on for additional AI risk analysis, suggestions is going to be a focal point today. So to start, what we are going to do is similar to what we saw for the Wisdom Basic demonstration earlier, where I am going to take a document and drag and drop that right up here in this drop files here section. Difference being, when I click on contract, we are not going to see it ask us for a type of agreement that we're going to use because we're going to be leveraging Wisdom Plus. This page is going to be looking a little bit different for the initial load and after it does load as well, because this is also going to be leveraging OpenAI's ChatGPT for additional contract insight into whatever document we are pulling in. So with Wisdom Basic, that's going to be utilizing a naive Bayes AI model, which is really fantastic for decision making and text extraction. And it also makes it smaller. So those of you who are more interested on a on-premise system can have that Wisdom Basic installed locally. You don't have to have that kind of go out to a external server. You also have the assurance that way that your contract data is protected because it is kept just to your system. Now, that is also the case with Wisdom Plus. Part of our agreement with OpenAI is that they are not using your contracts as part of their learning model. We are just leveraging their specifically legal learning model for some additional contract insight on the documents we're pulling in. Now, this first tab that we are seeing here is going to be showing you things that are going to be in Wisdom Basic. But I still want to kind of take a moment to walk through this just so we can see that in comparison to what we saw earlier with Mike's system and what I'm showing you right now, Wisdom Basic is trained in our two systems to extract very different things. Now, we do have some similarities. We're still getting the contract title, counterparty name. We're still getting some of the same dates. But I have some service deliverables clauses being pulled out, initial payment date, project scope, project cost, and as well as some SLA information. So you can have this kind of fine-tuned to extract the data that is most relevant to your team, as opposed to us just kind of giving you out of the box, hey, this is what's being extracted. You will have some room to play around with that. Now, even though this is fantastic, this is a lot of help already out of the box with just Wisdom Basic. Wisdom Plus is going to provide us with additional help. Now, first, I'm going to go down to this high risk findings tab. And this is going to give me some languages that just have red flags based off of the contract type and the language contained in each of these clauses. So I can see that my binding effects contains non-standard language for this service agreement. Force majeure, same thing, non-standard language for this particular agreement type. Now, as I'm going through, I'm reading these ones that are kind of popped up front and center as non-standard language or red flags, I can dismiss those that I'm saying, no, actually this binding effects is fine. This force majeure is fine. Just to remove them and kind of get them off the docket for me. Now, if I had unintentionally dismissed something that I probably should have had a deeper look at, we do have that ability here to still show the dismissed ones, restore them back if necessary. The next piece that I want to show now is if I go to Wisdom Assist. Now, there's a few different aspects that are going to be in this Wisdom Assist section. The first is going to be possible system additions. So this is going to give us the ability to kind of read through this agreement and signify some things that we don't have in our system. You know, we can see here that it's saying, hey, ABC supplier is not in your system. Do you want to add them as a counterparty? And with just a click, I can add that as a new counterparty. I don't currently have an audit rights clause in my system. If I wanted to leverage that, I could click add clause. I could just copy this text. So we have a lot of value of quickly adding things into our system that maybe we should be leveraging, maybe we don't have. You know, we don't have a confidentiality clause. We like the way that theirs is written. We can add that to our clause library, make some changes to that, and then utilize that in our contract going forward if necessary. Now, another tab on this Wisdom Assist section is the Sentiments tab, which allows us to look at each individual clause from a certain perspective. So as opposed to, you know, viewing this as nobody right now, all the language shows as neutral because we're not actually viewing this as any certain party. But we can see if I go ahead and click on client, now I see, oh, audit rights is in my favor. Compliance with laws in my favor. So a lot of these are specifically in my favor. I'm in a better position than the counterparty would be for these. Where if I go ahead and switch this to service provider, we will see the opposite now. A lot of these that were positive for the client are now showing as a negative for the service provider. Now, this is great information just to know right off the bat how these different clauses are affecting us specifically. But we can also leverage this knowledge in the editing of this document. As an example, let's say this service provider that we're using for this particular agreement has been fantastic for us. We've had a really fantastic relationship with them, and we want to make that relationship even stronger than it already is. So we don't want to send them a bunch of language that is kind of a negative for them. We want to be on more of an even ground in these negotiations. We can go ahead and copy this and use our Wisdom Assist chatbot. Now, for the sake of time, I just kind of copy and pasted, making this audit right clause mutually beneficial, so we didn't have to watch me type that all out. I'm not the fastest typer when I'm talking at the same time. But this will go ahead and now, again, leverage that OpenAI large language model and provide us with a mutually beneficial version of this clause. Now, when it is going out and leveraging that larger model, it can take a little bit more time, but that is going to give us a result. While we're waiting for that, actually, going back real quick to this Wisdom basic categories, these clause extractions, something I always like to note is how easy it is to create an additional extraction for something like a warranty clause or any of those standard clauses that you are seeing in your agreements. So I'm going to go over to one of our configuration menus, which is in our setup, and there's going to be a Wisdom configuration setting. And here I can, let's minimize that. We don't need that right this second. This is going to be a field recommendation section. So right here, I can see clause frequency. This is saying how often these different clauses are in my agreements. And it's going to provide us a list based on the frequency that they are in the agreements. But from here, we can see I don't have a clause to capture, or I don't have a field to capture governing law, but that's appearing in 80% of my agreements. So very quickly, I can go ahead and click add field. It will go ahead and add this field for me, add an extraction process, And in addition to creating that for new agreements, it also has the ability to go back and backlog old agreements as well. So if we end up in a situation where we realize, man, we really should have been categorizing our governing law on all of our agreements, and we have not been doing that, we don't have to worry about going back and doing that manually. This will provide us with that ability to go back and scan our legacy contracts, or the ones that have already been in our system, I should say, and populate that field should we want to do that. Or we can just have it only do things going forward. We'll go ahead and cancel that. Looks like it did process on this tab, but not on the tab I was on for whatever reason. So we can copy that mutually beneficial version of this audit right clause, though, and we can utilize that in our redlining later on. Now, from here, now that we have this kind of read through, we're kind of seeing some different red flags already, like the lack of a limit of liability language, if I can talk this morning, being found. So again, some additional red flags that are popping up for us. There is also the clause replacement tool that we had seen earlier. So this will allow us, it's going to reprocess here again quickly, us to use that clause replacement tool and select clauses that we would like to replace with versions of our own. Now, we did kind of see that earlier, so I am going to show you another tool that can assist with document redlining as well. I'm just going to go ahead and save this record. So what I'm going to be showing you now is going to be our auto redline tool. So in opposition of what we saw with our clause replacement tool, where we are selecting specific clauses that we would like to replace with our own, this auto redline tool is just going to, oops, my tab is set up over here, going to go through and automatically do some of these red lines for us. I'll just hit auto redline, hit OK. And now it's going to be processing this document. So it's reading through this and looking at rules that we had previously set up of language that we would like to replace. So once I get this page refreshed, we do have that auto redlined version of the document here. And I'm going to go ahead and open it. Now, the automatic red lines do appear in yellow just so you can easily differentiate between, manual red lines that we made. As an example, if I strike this out, those are red, as you probably are more used to. The clause replacement tool will appear in green, where auto redline appears in yellow. Depending on your monitor resolution, that may come across through the screen share a little bit funny, but it is easy and focused whenever you are looking at this on your own monitor. So yeah, this is used differently by some of our clients. Some of them will just use it to do singular clause like we saw here, just some of those non-negotiables that they have. And then some of our clients will use this more at length, where it's just kind of going through the document and redlining a large portion of clauses. They do a lot of language that is redlined with this. Let me go ahead and get out of this inline editor, though, because we don't want to make any additional changes to this. And I also want to then come in here and show some additional features that we can do with the Wisdom Assist chatbot. So you can see on some of this clause language that I had Wisdom pull out previously, I have a little button here to transfer to the Wisdom Assist. So I can go ahead and click on this, and it's go ahead and transferring that to the chat window. And now from here, I can give it some instructions. I can have it rewrite, I can have it translate, I can have it summarize. So let's say I don't fully understand this clause, I can just get a summary of what the language is here. So very quickly, I don't have to pull this out. I don't have to go to one of my colleagues and get some additional input. I can just go ahead and get a summarization right through that chat bot. Again, this can be utilized for translations into different languages as well, if that is something that you desire, or rewriting one. If you just don't love the way it's written, you want to modify it a little bit, we can instead use that same process, and we can rewrite that clause instead. So as an example, similar to what I saw or what I showed you earlier, I can say in favor of client, and it's going to make a language version in favor of that client now. Now, so far with the chatbot, I have been just kind of talking about a lot of Wisdom Plus capabilities. Another Wisdom Plus capability that the chatbot will have, in addition to examining language that we've kind of just fed it, I can just say something like, can you provide me a warranty clause for a service agreement? And even though we didn't give it any point of reference previously, we weren't ever throughout this process examining a warranty clause. It can go ahead and write one for us if for whatever reason this agreement was lacking one and we wanted to go ahead and insert one in. In addition, though, to the Wisdom Plus capabilities of the chatbot, we do have the ability to also leverage this with the out-of-the-box Wisdom Basic to an extent. For Wisdom Basic, if I go ahead and come up here and let me just go ahead and turn off my Wisdom Plus processing so I can kind of show you how that works. This can still be utilized as a really nice navigation tool throughout the system. So let's say you went through your initial training of the system, you remember, we have that clause library in here, but you don't quite remember how you go through the process of adding a clause to your clause library. You just say, how do I add a clause to my clause library? And it's going to go ahead and leverage our, I'm sorry. How do I create a contract record? It's going to leverage our wiki, and it's also going to just give us a quick link to go ahead and go straight to my add contract page. So we can really quickly get to those different sections of the system as necessary using this chatbot, even with the out-of-the-box features. We don't have to have the Wisdom Plus for some of that navigational feature. Oh, no, I covered a lot so far. Do we have any questions on anything I had covered with this AI portion as of now? Back here. All right. All right, so to quickly show you, so let me get out of this system and go into a different environment quickly so I can show you another capability. So in addition to the high-risk findings that we saw with Wisdom Plus, we do have the ability to see some red flags utilizing Wisdom Basic as well, utilizing some of the Wisdom Basic AI capabilities. So let me quickly go ahead and pull in an agreement here again. We're going to go through Wisdom Basic for this piece again. This one is a software agreement. We're going to use MS Word text. Now from here, I know we've already kind of seen this process, so I'm not going to waste any time showing you this piece again, but I'm just going to go ahead and save and continue. So I can show you another AI-powered risk trigger that I have utilizing Wisdom Basic in my system. And that is going to be an alert for non-standard warranty language. So when I pulled in this agreement, you can see in this system, I do have it pull out my warranty clause, and the system is recognizing this is non-standard. This is not language we typically are approving of. And it's giving us that notice in nice red text right at the top of the screen, so we don't have the opportunity to miss it. This can be punch up a little bit more as well. It's not static to just the language that we're seeing here. This is just an example of how I have that set up in my system. But if we would like to modify this language, make it a little bit bigger, even that is a capability that we can do for these types of on-screen alerts and flags for that risk mitigation. Now that is covering what I had intended to show for this AI portion. So again, I would like to open up the floor. Does anybody have any questions when it comes to the AI functionality, whether that be the text extraction, the risk mitigation, risk notice tools, or the efficiency tools for the summarization, clause creation, anything on that point? Feel free to type those into the chat if so. I'm not seeing anything. Oh, there we go. What specific prompts are you using when using AI? Is the question here, what are the prompts that are being sent to OpenAI, or what are the prompts that Wisdom Basic is utilizing for some of this text extraction? I just want to make sure I'm understanding your question fully. I guess given the time we have here, I can just kind of elaborate on both. With Wisdom Basic, so the text extraction component, when we are pulling out term clause, warranty clause, the SLA information, that is the Naive Bayes AI model. So that is going to be looking for specific markers. So the system is prompting it to look for with something like warranty clause. It's prompting it to look for warranty and then extract the section after that. For something like the SLA uptime percentage, it's instructing it to look for SLA or service level agreement and finding a percentage after that. It's pretty straightforward when it comes to the Wisdom Basic piece. When it comes to the Wisdom Plus piece, I don't necessarily know the exact prompts that are being sent to OpenAI, but it is going to, for the high risk findings, as an example, it's going to send the prompt of, is this language high risk for, whatever the agreement type is that it recognized. One of the first things it has it do is identify record type. So in the example I had earlier, it had it identify as a services agreement here, right? So once it identified as a services agreement, then it's saying, hey, is this clause high risk for a service agreement? Is this clause high risk for a service agreement? And why is it high risk? Similarly to the Wisdom Assist piece, it's saying, is this high risk for the client? Is this positive for the client? Is it negative for the service provider? So again, I don't know exactly the wording that is being sent on the back end, but that's kind of the gist of what those prompts are. Again, the language model that we're using for Wisdom Plus is separate from the standard chat GDP that you'd kind of go to the website and use. This is specifically kind of a legal model that is being leveraged for this. Are there any other questions? All right, I'm not seeing anything else. I'll keep an eye on the chat if there are any other questions that filter through. But what types of risk and its mitigation? So again, I guess when it comes to the prompts, that's going to depend on if we are talking about Wisdom Basic or Wisdom Plus. When it comes to Wisdom Plus, it's going to leverage the contract type. And then if that particular language is a risk for the contract type based off of what may be normal for a service agreement or consulting agreement or software agreement, whatever type of agreement we are leveraging in that process. When it comes to Wisdom Basic, the alert that I had right here, the non-standard warranty clause found, this is saying that it is a deviation from what our standard language is. So it's specifically referencing our standard warranty clause that we had provided Wisdom Basic and saying, hey, this is a deviation from what you're normally accepting. It can be a phrase in there, the clause in its entirety. And if there is a variance between what you provided it previously and what it extracted, that's when this particular notification is triggering off in my system. Now, again, this is just an example. This is not a hard and fast extraction that is out of the box. So we do have capability of making it more nuanced for whatever your use case may be. Any other questions? What data is required to ensure compliance to the contract? So that could be a pretty broad question. That will vary a lot depending on specific client compliances we are talking to. If we're talking about internal compliance, that might be rules that you're setting up specifically. If we're talking about something that is developed outside of your organization, such as like an ITAR compliance, obviously there's different rules that are being adhered to there. That's really something that we would kind of have to examine your specific use case to tell you exactly what data is required for your specific compliance that you would be looking at. But that is something that if you're to schedule some time with one of our account managers following this, definitely something that we could dig into on a discovery call or during a demonstration, what kind of data we would need for your specific sets of compliance that you're expecting. Great, perfect. Thank you for the questions. All right, Tyler, I'm not seeing anything else come through, so I can pass it back to you.
All right, sounds good. Thank you very much, Cam. So next up, we are going to talk about document collaboration and templates and electronic signatures with James Linhart. James, it looks like we have a perfect amount of time for a little break, and then you can pick up at 10:35 whenever you're ready. Okay, thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. I appreciate you all joining today's session. My name is James Linhart, and today I will be focusing on CobbleStone's document collaboration portal, as well as taking a little bit of a deeper dive into the IntelliSign functionality of the system. So what this module is really going to be used for is streamlining negotiation processes, essentially ping-ponging back and forth between the internal and external party, again, to conduct any red lines, comments, and make new revisions to the agreement, and then we'll have full versioning control within this tool as well. So upon looking at my screen here, you'll see that I have a contract record already created for a consulting agreement. Essentially what I did here is I went through a similar process to what we all saw earlier today with Michael Donnelly's portion of just filling out those fields and then having a template automatically attach. Now, at this point, I kind of wanted to pick up and tell a bit of a story for this step of my workflow. You can see here under my status field, this reflects as counterparty review. So in a real use case, this module is really used for this step of the process, right? Sending it out to the counterparty, allowing them to review the document, make any changes, propose new language in the agreement, and we'll walk through what that functionality looks like through the document collaboration portal. Again, going to tasks and emails, we can see here that this task was sent to myself. So I'm responsible for conducting this process, initiating the review between ourselves and the external party. Now, all I need to do to initiate this process is just go to my attachments and templates area, the files and attachments browser, and you can see I already have that standard agreement template, which was automatically attached based off of my workflow. Again, those fields were filled out, conditions were met, this template was brought over automatically. Now, directly underneath of the files and attachments browsers, you can see that merge document template directly underneath of here, this standard agreement. Now, in order to initiate this process, all I need to do is just click View Manage, and then from here, we'll be brought to our Document Processing Manager, the Template Manager, where we can then see a couple of different options of how we can use this tool. So first and foremost, we'll see we have the overview section. We can see here we have that standard agreement that was automatically attached. Now, if I come down underneath of the files and info to e-approvals, this is where I can start an approval process. Now, I do like to take a little bit of time and touch on this screen that we're looking at here. You'll see that I have a couple approval groups set up. I have an external approval, and then an internal approval. For myself and our external party, our point of contact with my company, which in this case is just an example company today of Linhart Laboratories. You can see here those approval processes are good to go. Once I click Start Approval Process, we'll be prompted to select a couple of different options here. Now we can give this a title, right? Maybe I just wanted to change this to please review and propose new language if needed. I could even put that in my description box as well. So if I wanted to have that reflect here, we can put a title and a description into this process info area. Now we do have a couple of different options for the approval type. We can either have full approvals, allows for downloading, uploading versions, including check-in and check-out functionality, version compare, preview management, etc. And then we can also route this for acknowledgement only. So maybe if there's an update for your terms and conditions, certificates of insurance, or just general things that you need to obtain acknowledgement for from different vendors or again, external parties, we could leverage that. But for today, we're going to go through and do full approvals. Again, we can have check-in, check-out be optional, or we can have that be mandatory and required. We can also have see all comments set to yes, no. Again, for demonstration purposes, I'm going to keep that as yes. Now, once I click save here, we'll see that this process is going to reload and we can double check everything, cross our T's, dot our I's, and make sure that our employees to notify are set up correctly, our files are set up correctly, as well as those approval groups. We can see here that the standard agreement template is ready to go. We have that file already attached automatically here. If we go to employees to notify, we see here that I just have myself, but if we wanted to add multiple different employees, stakeholders, or executives to receive notification, again, be notified about this process, we could do so. And then we also have approval groups. Now this process today, again, just to streamline the demonstration and keep it simple, is just going to be set up for two approval groups, one for the internal party and one for the external approval. If I click our little caret icon here to expand the information here, we can see I have my counterparty approver of Joel Embiid from Linhart Laboratories. Again, internal approval would be myself. Now, there is no limit to the amount of approval groups that we can have involved in these processes. It's very common that we see clients with maybe a lengthy approval process. Maybe there's multiple different signatures required per your business process. Again, there is no limit to the amount of approval groups that we can have set up here. But again, I can see here now that everything is good. We have my external approval. Joel Embiid is the point of contact that I need this to go to. My internal approval is ready to go as well. And we even have those employees to notify. Selected files are all good to go. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to click Start Process on the left-hand side. You can see here, it's just going to make sure that I'm ready to go. Initiate this approval. This action cannot be undone. So once I click OK here, we'll see this refresh, and now we have a status underneath of here telling us that this process or this approval process is in fruition right now. We're going through those steps. What's going to happen next is I'm going to essentially switch hats here. I'm going to start playing the role of that external approval group. I'm going to receive an email as if I was Joel Embiid from Linhart Laboratories to come into our document collaboration gateway, and we'll take a look at a couple of the options we have there. But if I just pop out this email again to show you all what that looks like, we can see here it'll be very similar to the email we saw earlier on the contract lifecycle management demonstration with Michael Donnelly. We can see here invitation to approve your documents and review. You can see the subject line that I was put in here, as well as the body as well. Now, once I click Review Documents, again, I'm going to be brought to the Document Collaboration portal as Joel Embiid, that external party. Once I come in here, you can see that we have the standard agreement template, the published version, and we have a couple of different options of what we can do here. We are able to see that this is on version 1. Again, we have full versioning control within this tool. We can see here that the status of this document is available to download if I wanted to. And then I did want to just bring the attention to this drop-down menu we have here. This is really where we're going to be living throughout the demonstration today. There are a couple of different options of what we can do from within this document collaboration portal. We can upload comments, we can actually upload new documents to this, we can download this, we can approve if we feel as if everything is good to go and we're comfortable with all of the language that we're seeing. We can preview the document, we can edit, and we can also see older archived versions. Now, anytime the external party comes into the portal here, we will receive a notification internally that the document collaboration gateway has been viewed. So again, we can receive notices regarding the process of this. Anytime someone opens it up, takes a look at it, anytime a new version has been made, we will receive full notifications surrounding those items. Now again, for today's demonstration purposes, I wanted to show how easy it is for the external parties to come in and make those edits and, again, upload different language, propose new language, terms, conditions, maybe add a new clause in there. So I'll click Edit for today. This is going to bring us to our inline editor, which we saw a bit earlier on today's session. Again, I'm sure you all will be very familiar with this. It's essentially a Microsoft Word user interface with the same features and functionalities that we can do in our native Word application. Now again, I'm in here as the external party. A couple things I like to mention from this here is you'll notice I have this licensee's misuse clause highlighted in blue text. What this means is that this clause is non-negotiable. This is something that is required in our language. The external party doesn't even have access to make changes to that clause, again, because we've deemed that as non-negotiable. We do have full clause ownership in the system as well, where maybe there's a specific party, maybe your general counsel owns a specific clause, so they would receive notifications anytime that clause is tried or anytime that clause is attempted to make changes to. Again, we can see that in nice blue text highlighted for us. But again, we're in this inline editor, again, as the external party. Maybe I just wanted to strike out this term clause. I can have those track changes enabled. We can strike that out and see that in nice red line text. If I wanted to add a comment anywhere in here, I could just highlight this text, add a quick comment. Maybe I'll just say something like no good. Again, for example purposes. What we can do now is we can manually type out the updated clause that we want to propose. Maybe again, as the external party, we had an alternative clause that we wanted to leverage. We could type that out here. Maybe I could even just leave a note, another comment saying, hey, this is not good. Please propose an alternative clause. So the external parties do have the full capability to make those changes, add those comments, and then that is all visible for us internally as well. So again, this is really nice in streamlining those negotiation processes, ensuring that everyone is up to date with what is going on with our negotiation. Again, we made our red line. So what I'll go ahead and do next is I'll just click save here. Once I click save, we'll see that my approval group has been completed. Now, this is where that ping pong negotiation process really starts. Again, the first approval group was Joel Embiid, that external party. He made his changes. He struck out a clause. Now I'm going to receive a notification internally that it's time for our approval group to go in and look at those changes, whether or not we agree, whether or not we want to propose some new language, right? So again, I can see that I got another email here letting me know that it is my turn to come in and approve and review those documents. So again, if I click this button here to review the documents, I'll be switching hats at this point and coming in here as the internal party. We can see here at the top left-hand side, I'm signed in as myself. We can see now that on this document collaboration, essentially dashboard we're looking at here, we can see that we are on version 2. We can see now that this is the second version that was sent back to us from that external party. So what I can do is I can just go to edit real quick to see those changes, to see the track changes that were enabled. Any comments that were left by the external party can all be viewed through here. So if I click edit, it's going to again bring us back into this online editor. And this is where we'll be able to see those red lines that were made by our external party, in this case, Linhart Laboratories. Once this loads through, if I scroll down the page, we can see here that they struck out the term clause. They don't want to agree to this. Maybe they're not comfortable with the wording of this. We can see that in nice purple text. If I go to proofing, I can view the comments that were left by that counterparty approver. We can see here they said, okay, this is no good. We can get a timestamp down to the exact second of when this comment was left. So that way we again have that full audit trail down to every single action taken within this portal. At this point, what I can go ahead and do is I can leverage my CobbleStone ribbon here up at the top of the page, and this is going to give me access to alternative clauses in my clause library. Again, right, maybe they're not comfortable with the wording of this term clause that they struck out. Internally, we feel that this needs to be in here, but maybe we can switch up the language of that, the terminology, the verbiage, so I can add an alternate clause. This is going to give me access, again, to my internal clause library with a list of alternative clauses that I can use. I'll just select that term clause here. Wherever my cursor is at, once I click add, we'll see now that that new text has been added in red underlined text. And we can see that the language is different here. It's not the same as the one that was initially proposed by us. The counterparty came in and redlined that. So we want to try to be a good patron in these negotiations, maybe propose a different alternative frame of that term clause here. Now again, I've made my changes. I've reviewed this. I've seen the red lines that were left. I came in and I proposed a new term clause. So I can click save. Now again, what's going to happen next at this point is we can see that my approval group is complete. What I can do next is I can come in here again as the external party to approve or deny this. Again, we've made that change. We're kind of doing that ping pong effect, right? We can now see we are on version 3. So bear with me just 1 second here while that email comes through. Again, I got another email as if I was Joel Embiid. Again, we'll switch hats here real quick. I can quickly review document on that email, and we can see here now I'm in here again as Joel Embiid, right? That ping pong effect. We're going through that full negotiation process at this point, and we can see here now that this is version 3. So we've gone through a couple of different versions. We've proposed some new language. There's been a few iterations of this consulting agreement that we're going through a negotiation on. So again, I'm in here as Joel Embiid. Maybe I just wanted to take a look at what CobbleStone came back with the proposed edits that I made. Once I open up the inline editor here, I can come back. I can see that that term clause has been replaced. I can review this. Okay, the initial term of this agreement shall be 12 months. Okay, that's comfortable for me to agree to. I'll cancel here, and I can just approve this. We could also, again, do a couple of different options here. We could download this out if we wanted to as the external party. But again, just for demonstration's sake, I'm going to go ahead and click approve. Once I click that button, that option is just going to ask here, are we sure that we want to approve the following published file version? Again, I can see I'm in here as Joel Embiid, counterparty final approval. I can go ahead and click approve. At this point, my approval group has been completed and finalized. Again, this is now version 4, the fully agreed upon copy. I'll receive notification again internally that our external party came in and approved this process. But what I can go ahead and do next is go back to my record details page, that approval process dashboard. If I just do a little quick refresh right here, we'll now see that this process is complete. We can see here now that all of the documents are good to go. If I wanted to actually expand this, I could see all of the different versions. I could attach these to the record if I wanted to. Very easy to do so. If I click this little button here, I can just auto attach the document. And now we can see that that file was attached to the primary record successfully. So now at this point, we've gone through our full approval process. We can see all of the versions. We can see that full audit trail, right, of the timestamps of when those were done. Full versioning control here on the right-hand side. At this point, though, what I'll go ahead and do is just scroll down the page quickly. I'll go to my return to record option. And this is going to bring me back to the record where I can then go to my attachments and templates table. And I will be able to see that new version of the standard agreement from the e-approvals process that we just went through. So now again, we had that first version here. We can now see the fully agreed upon version is living underneath of our root folder. So I can go to my tasks and emails and I can approve this counterparty review step. We've gone through our negotiation process at this point, and now we're ready to get this document signed off on. Now again, that was the process of the document collaboration module. What I did want to go ahead and just go through next is again how we can leverage that IntelliSign e-signature tool through the system based off of that fully agreed upon document through our approval process. So again, this will be pretty similar to what we all saw earlier on the contract lifecycle management demonstration, but again, we'll walk through that one more time based off of that fully agreed upon final version that we received from the e-approval process. If I just open up my document toolbox here, I can go to e-sign document. Again, we do offer complementary connectors with CobbleStone Enterprise Edition for DocuSign, Adobe Sign, and Sign Now. So if your organization had that pre-existing license, you could connect it to CobbleStone Contract Insight for no additional cost with our enterprise package. Again, the document collaboration portal module that we just walked through is actually paired with the IntelliSign tool. So we'll kind of tie that together and walk through this process again here. Once I click the IntelliSign button, we can see here we have a couple of different options. We can do a free form signing or placeholder signatures. I'll go ahead and just do placeholder signatures again today just to show you a little bit of a different process as opposed to what we saw earlier. Once I click save here, we'll then be ready to add employees to notify and add the document signers. You can see here I can add any number of employees to receive notification about this signature process. So maybe if we needed some executives, key stakeholders to be involved and receive notification regarding this, we could set them up to do so. Again, no limit to that. And we can also set up document signers. So what I'll do today is I'll just select a company contact signer, but you see here we can also assign an employee signer for internal purposes. I'll select that company contact signer for today. You can see here, once I've selected that, it still says cannot start document signing, but the employees to notify are validated. That's essentially just because I have to select that company contact, right, and then set those e-signature locations. So once I select Joel Embiid, we can see here now we're ready to set those e-signature locations. Again, coordinate those placeholder signatures. Once I click set e-signature locations, we can just quickly scroll to our signature page here on the 4th page, drag and drop this nice and neat for Joel Embiid. We'll click save right here, return to the dashboard, and now we'll see that everything is good. There's no more red. We're actually ready to go and ready to start this process. Now we can set up a document order for the signature processes. You can see here, this is order number 1. If we wanted to add multiple different signatories onto this document, we could easily do so and then set those orders accordingly. Again, I'll just keep it pretty streamlined and simple for today, just for demonstration's sake. I'll go ahead and click start process. Now we can see here, once I click that, signature process is currently ongoing right now. And I'll receive an email, again, as if I was Joel Embiid, a little bit different this time, to come in and sign the documents. Again, it's going to bring me to that similar document collaboration portal, our IntelliSign portal, where this time, instead of making changes, making edits, I can actually just go ahead and sign this document. You'll see here at the top, we have an option to just start. It'll bring me directly to the signature portion where my signature needs to go. We can see here, I've just adopted the signed or typed out signature, if you will. Once I click next here, we can see here that that signature has been placed. I could click here and edit my signature if I wanted to, but we'll go ahead and accept and finalize. We can see here, it's just going to load through. Signature process has been finalized successfully. If I come back to this IntelliSign dashboard here and click refresh, we will be able to see that now the signature process is completed and finalized. I can view the completed files here, auto attach them real quickly. Once I go back to the record, we'll be able to see that that fully executed document is now living underneath of our files in attachments browser. So once I come underneath of here, we can see here signed standard agreement, as well as the certificate of completion from our IntelliSign tool. Now, functionality wise, that's really the bulk of what I wanted to go through, but what I actually wanted to do next is show you a little bit more information that we have regarding this module, where we can see some clause analysis information. We can see and track how many times clauses have been edited, how many times things have been, proposed changes to. Maybe if we're working on a lot of contracts, as I'm sure you all are, right? Anytime those clauses are, edited or we get those proposed changes, maybe we want to take a look at that a little bit deeper. Maybe we want to analyze the clauses that we're proposing and maybe make some changes to our clause library or to our standard templates based off of the amount of times we've gotten requested edits on that. Vanessa, I see you said that the purple text is excellent. I actually totally agree. I think the red can, have that psychological negative impact, right? Kind of seems like we're being mean sometimes or something. So yeah, I totally agree. I really like that purple text too. Appreciate the feedback there. What I wanted to do though, is if I go to negotiations, I can go to clause analysis right here. If I open this up in a new tab quickly to show you all, this is going to give me an option to select an area for where we can see those clause alterations, right? I'll just keep it on contracts for now, but we could do that for counterparties, e-procurement, employees, purchase orders, or requests. And then I can select a specific date range to look at how many times we've received those clause alterations, right? I can set a start date and an end date. So maybe I just wanted to check this all time, right? I'll just do it from a couple years back so we can get some good results here. I'll do it from 2023, and then I'll just have it set up to be today's end date. Once I conduct this search, we'll see every clause that we've had merge and how many times those clauses have been altered. You can see here, I have a warranty term, indemnification, governing law, confidentiality, and assignment mergeable clause that we've been using. We can see here this indemnification clause was merged 133 times, right? We're using that indemnification clause quite a bit. We've only had one clause alteration to that. Maybe we wanted to take a look, go back through our centralized repository. We could audit that and see when that clause was altered, maybe the changes that were proposed by that external party, so we can see exactly what they didn't like, maybe what they did like. So this is a nice, easy way to, again, analyze the clauses that we're using. We can see here how many times they've been altered, how many times they've been merged. You can see here I have some pretty good language in my clause library because really we've only had one clause alteration out of 133, or I guess 136 total clause merges. There's only been one alteration proposed. So we can see that our clauses are really good. We like these, but again, maybe on the inverse of that, maybe we merged in 133 indemnification clauses and there'd been 100 alterations. If that was the case, maybe we wanted to take a look at that clause, maybe edit or critique that, make it a little bit different to make the counterparties more comfortable agreeing to that. Now, that's really the bulk of what I did want to focus on for the document collaboration module, as well as the e-signature portion with CobbleStone IntelliSign. At this point, I'll open up the floor to see if there's any questions. So by all means, if there's any questions from anyone on the call here today, please feel free to throw some in the chat. I'd be more than happy to assist. All right, I'm not seeing any questions come in the chat here. So again, if there's any questions, if anything comes up after the fact, please feel free to throw something in the chat. I'd be more than happy to respond to. Don't be shy. Please feel free to ask as many questions as you prefer. But at this point, Tyler, I will go ahead and pass back to you.
Sure. Thanks very much, James. All right. We're moving ahead to our fourth and final presentation for this morning. We're going to talk about post-execution, obligation and deliverables management, and searching and reporting. That's going to be led by Kristen Riviello. Kristen, if you just want to give it 2 minutes, we'll take a short break this time and then pick up when you're ready. Thank you.
All right. Good morning, everybody. As Tyler mentioned, so today I will be going over some of the more post-execution side of things, obligation, deliverable management, and searching and reporting. Hopefully what this session will do is kind of put a little bit of a bow on the morning sessions today. We're going to kind of cover some of the features that we reviewed in the first session today with Mike Donnelly. So hopefully this all kind of, tie everything together for us really nicely. But I want to start off just by being on the dashboard screen here. So as we saw in kind of the initial first session today, we had, an overall just kind of, generalized contract management dashboard, but we can build out dashboards for various different purposes within the system. So in this case, we could see here I have a compliance tracking dashboard, which is tracking my kind of milestones, deliverables, obligations within my system. So I can see here I have a handful of past due tasks that I might want to start taking action on. I have 2 tasks that are going to be upcoming within the next 10 days, 19 tasks in the next 90 days. And I can also see here that I have a tile that's tracking my obligation completion variance average. So in this case, this is showing me that on average, my organization that uses the CobbleStone system is completing their obligations 1 day early compared to their due date. So that's something that's great, allows me to kind of, have that, 10,000 foot view on the timeline of if we're completing our items on time. So it's great to see that. If this number was negative, if it was -1 or, even potentially worse than that, we might want to take a look at that, seeing why things are kind of falling behind in the completion process versus when those items are due. As I scroll down, again, just like we saw previously, you can absolutely pin dashboards to your, or pin reports to your dashboard. So in this case, I have an obligation management report, which will show me overall, like all of the obligations that are assigned to my contracts for 2025 is how I have it set up. All these fields that we see here are entirely configurable. So if you wanted to capture additional information or maybe just kind of different information organized differently than we see here, that's totally fine. You can build out those reports in any way that you would like to. And in this case, I can see that I currently have two particular obligations that are not due quite yet, but are coming up for their due date that haven't been completed. And I can see, all my other obligations have been completed on here for me. Obviously, if I wanted to have this particular report show me only open items, I can absolutely do that as well. This is just kind of an overall obligation management report. And then, like I mentioned, I also have that tile that we saw that is tracking my obligation variance reports. So this will kind of show me, hey, what was the obligation? When was it completed? When was the due date? And then I have this calculated field that'll tell me the difference between those two. So on this particular date for, us delivering the contract for our consulting agreement, that was done 3 days before the due date, whereas our first milestone here for that same consulting agreement, the milestone was actually completed 2 days after its due date. So again, these are all ways that we can get, just a little bit more creative and just have overall more transparency and visibility when it comes to our obligations related to contracts within the system. Because I think a lot of time we spend time on, okay, getting the contract up to that, executed, status, it's signed, it's active. But then we want to make sure that we are keeping track of all the obligations or compliance items within the contract that we need to manage in order to make sure that, we're going to be in good standing with that contract and all the items that we signed for in that contract. Now, I want to jump to a contract record within my system here. So I have a consulting agreement here. All of my fields have been filled out. We're currently in an active contract. So I currently, we've gotten our signature on there, and now I have to start, managing and dealing with my deliverables and obligations. So within the system, you have the ability to set up an unlimited amount of additional subtables to capture various information, not only related to obligations, but related to the contract just in general. And we can see here, I do have an obligation subtable here. And in here, I have a number of different obligations that are tied to this contract. So I can go in, again, add as many of the different obligations that are tied to this as I need. If I come in here and I just add one just to kind of take a look at what this looks like. As I mentioned, when it comes to the fields that are being tracked on this obligation subtable, these are all, flexible. You can add additional fields to this. You can remove fields from this. So again, it's relevant to the information that you and your organization need to capture related to your contracts. We can see here I have just kind of, standard text boxes as far as like my obligations title. Maybe this I'll just keep it simple today. Let's say this is milestone 3 for the contract. I can have drop downs. So if you have specific obligation types that are always tied to your contract, instead of something being just, a standard text box, we can give a drop down here and say, all right, this is actually a milestone. It's a meeting. It's a piece of, it's a compliance item that we need to meet for this particular contract. Whatever the case may be, again, this list is entirely configurable, as we've seen in a number of different areas within the system so far on our masterclass this morning. I also have my various, date fields where I can track these. So, maybe this, particular milestone is due, let's say, the end of July. I can select that from here, add any additional details, and then I can also track, again, when are we completing these particular obligations, so that transparency is all being tracked within the system, and it's all just kind of, tied to the one source of truth that your CobbleStone system can be. The other thing as well is you can see that at the moment, none of these particular fields are required. So if I stopped here and I didn't add any additional obligation details, obviously I wouldn't put in the obligation complete date because that hasn't been completed yet. But, I can go in and save this and, it'll just save the information that I have displayed for me here. Again, if we wanted to, where, maybe those first 4 fields are all required, we're going to need them across every single contract within the system, we can do so and, set those to be required fields here. Now, what's really, really nice when it comes to this, because obviously, it's great that we can, just track the obligations within a subtable and we can see when things are coming up on their due date. But all of this is kind of for naught if we can't get alerts around these particular items. When are the due dates coming up? How early do we need to be notified so that we can complete those tasks on time and make sure that, we are completing our obligations and, any deliverables in a timely manner and not falling behind anything. So in that case, we have the ability, if we go to the tasks and email section, we can absolutely set up alerts and various, workflows or approvals if needed that are completely tied around those obligations in that obligation table. So in this case, we can see I just have kind of one standard obligation alert that will go out that's tied to any of those various obligations in that subtable. However, as we saw, I can have various different types of obligations as well, right? So if I want to have, hey, maybe for my meetings, I want to have one specific alert because meetings take a little bit more time to prep than maybe, a deliverable or whatever the case may be. I can absolutely set up different alerts and tasks based on, potentially the obligation type or, whatever the case may be. But I can get really flexible when it comes to how my users are being alerted. In this case, like I said, it's just a more generalized, hey, an obligation due date's coming up, and it'll notify a specific user or users so that way they can take action and make sure that, again, we are in line with our deliverables and our obligations related to the contract. Now, something else as well when it comes to just the overall obligations within the system, again, it's nice to be able to see that and track these items on a specific contract record, but sometimes we might need, again, just a wider view of that. We're probably not just managing, one or two contracts within our system where we can go in and say, okay, what are the obligations for this individual contract versus another contract within the system? So we absolutely can report off of those various obligations and that information as well. So within the system, you always have the ad hoc report area. Now, my kind of general rule of thumb when it comes to ad hoc reporting, if there's a field for it where you're tracking that information in your system, you most likely are able to report off of it. So we can see here, I have a number of different obligation reports that I have built out within my system. I have some that are, tied to specifically to my contract metadata, obligation tracking for the year, my variance report, open obligations, completed obligations, etc. So again, we can build out as many of these as needed, whatever you think is going to be most beneficial for your organization to kind of have that information available at your fingertips. And then they can view them again in their kind of ad hoc report list like we see here. We can also pin these reports to various dashboards or even have these reports mailed out to users or non-users of the CobbleStone system so that everybody can have access to this information as it's needed. But I'd like to take a look at some of these since we're talking about reporting today as well. So I want to open up my contracts obligations 2025 report. So if I view and run this report, essentially the way that this report that I've built it is that this is what we call kind of an enhanced ad hoc report. So I can see here, I have a number of different various contract related metadata fields in my kind of initial row here. So I can see, the contract title, the company name, the expiration date, the date updated, etc. And again, all this is entirely configurable and flexible. But then we can see I can also expand this information here. So essentially what this is allowing me to see is what obligations are tied to that specific contract on one report. So again, I don't need to, go into each contract individually. I can view what all of my obligations and deliverables and milestones are right here at, at my fingertips. So I can see here a number of these particular milestones. Number of them have been completed. I can see that, again, those two that we were looking at before, or now three, I guess, that we were looking at before since we added milestone 3, are not completed, but everything else is tracked in here. So again, this is really helpful just to kind of add to the overall transparency of, your post-execution items, your deliverables and obligations within the system. And this can be something as well. These reports are really, really nice because, again, we can set them up on automated email schedulers if we want, individuals to receive this information and to be able to review it. They have that capability to do so within the system. The other thing as well when it comes to reporting is you can see with these enhanced reports as well, if you want to, you can actually turn on what's called field editing functionality in these. So again, instead of having to go directly to that specific report within, or that specific contract within the system, excuse me, to make edits or changes or updates to the obligation subtable, if I turn on and enable the field editing in the actual report, I can do that directly from the report here. So if I wanted to come in and I wanted to edit the row for my compliance review here, I can go in, update that information here. Maybe I did complete that specific report and functionality. I can come in and say, hey, yep, I completed it today, save that. And again, it'll save it not only on the report, but it'll also save it on the actual contract record within the system as well. So that's something that sometimes, like I work a lot with current clients that sometimes current clients don't utilize very heavily, but very, very nice if it comes to, hey, I'd like to just be able to edit a large number of information in bulk at any given time. Being able to do that on a report could potentially be a pretty nice solution for you overall. And then if you don't necessarily love that idea, like, hey, I don't want users that have the edit permission to be able to edit on a report. We want them to be doing that directly on the contract side of things for one reason or another. Again, that's absolutely fine. When you build out the report, you essentially just wouldn't enable the field editing side of things. And then this edit feature would not be available. It would just be, the fields that we have set up here and then the obligation subtable information. So nice little feature there when it comes to, again, being able to edit items kind of more in the bulk side of things. But then I can also just build out, what are called standard reports within the system as well. So my standard reports here, in this case, this is my obligation tracking report for 2025. And what this is showing is it just gives me kind of a list of all my obligations within my system. So again, here I'm not filtering it based off of, has this been completed? Is it still open? Is it closed, etc.? This is just showing me an overall view of all of my obligations and deliverables that have been processed in my system for the year of 2025. So in this case, again, just gives me a really good kind of overview of all those various items. If I need to jump to the specific contract record that's tied to this specific compliance review or this Q1 meeting, you can see here I can easily just, jump with the view contract ID and the view link here. It'll take me right to that specific contract. And then if I need to do any additional items or work on that contract, again, I can be brought there right from this specific report. But these types of more standard reports, you can see here, I don't have that caret to kind of expand and see the additional information in kind of that subtable view. It's just more of this nice little concise and clear list, again, around all of my obligations as well. And like I mentioned, when it comes to these reports, this specific report, the only thing that I am tracking as a filter is that, hey, the obligation due date is happening between, January 1st of this year and the 31st of this year. So anything in that is going to populate here for me. But like I mentioned, if I wanted to set it up where, hey, I only want to see things that are currently open, so they haven't been completed yet, that's going to be most beneficial for me. Again, absolutely fine. It just comes down to creating an additional filter where, hey, anything that has the obligation complete date open currently, it's not completed, there's not a date that lives in there. And then if I do that, it would only show, okay, here's milestone 3, compliance review and compliance review for my 2 different due dates there. So again, you just have that really nice level of transparency within the system across all of your contracts. And it's really up to you in terms of, if you like the idea of just having that nice kind of clean list with the list of all the different obligations, or if you like, hey, I do enjoy having some more of the contract related info and then opening that up in the subtable to view that obligation subtable in one area as well. So again, when it comes to reporting, obviously you can report on many additional items that are not obligation or kind of post-execution minded. But since we kind of covered that in the first session today, I wanted to walk through, how you can report on some things a bit more from that obligation and post-deliverable side of things. Now, You also have the ability to search within the system as well. So to reiterate, when it comes to searching, you have a couple different ways that you can go about it. One way that pretty much will follow you everywhere within the system is going to be the little search screen up at the top here. So if I want to go ahead and I want to search for, a keyword or a phrase like something like indemnification, I can come in, click on my little search glass, and this will show me across all of my records within the system where that specific word was found. So I can see indemnification was found in 130 particular contracts within my system. Now, the nice thing with this is that we can see here that for the majority of these results, almost all of them have just one little sheet of paper as the icon here within the source column. And that lets me know that that word was found in one of the metadata or of one of the files and attachments that were uploaded to the record. If we saw a little kind of cylinder here, that would also let me know it was found in one of the metadata fields. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to type in a keyword that I know is in a number of different fields within my system, and I'm going to search for the word cobblestone. So we can see in this instance for my top hit that the word cobblestone, we have our little sheet of paper, so that lets me know it was found in one of the words that's uploaded to the files and attachments. And then I have my little cylinder here. If I hover over it, we can also see that that information was found in the metadata or one of the fields on the actual record itself. Also, when it comes to quick searching here, I can see that it's going to show me any contracts within the system where that information was found, but I also can edit and make changes to, where it's kind of where that quick search is kind of searching for information as well. So in this case, I also have it searching through my requests within my system. I have it searching for any companies in the system that the word cobblestone was found in. And then CobbleStone also offers a e-sourcing and solicitations module within the system. So if that's enabled and you wanted to perform searches across your solicitations as well, again, that can be enabled, and it'll pull the information from there as well. And you can see it kind of isolates each section or each area into its own search results. So I'm only seeing here for the 254 results. These are the 254 contract results that information has been populated for me. And then from there, I obviously have the ability where I can go in if I just want to see, active contracts that are associated with the word cobblestone. I can go in, say that, okay, if the status contains the word active, I want to go ahead and I only want to view those. So that takes me from over 200 contracts down to 65, and I can continue to filter as needed. Now, something else that's available as well, and we can see it here, we have a little link here to we can search using our search engine. So CobbleStone does also offer a search engine within the system as well. Something that's really nice with the search engine is you can see here when I perform that search, there's this little hyperlink underneath that says save this search, where we can actually save these search engine searches within the system. Also, in one of the latest versions of CobbleStone, we can also pin these saved searches to a dashboard within the system. So if it's something where, hey, users are constantly coming in and performing, the same searches over and over and over again, obviously you can absolutely build ad hoc reports, which are essentially saved searches within the system. But if you want it to be more in that kind of search format like we're looking at here, I can go ahead, save this search, and then it'll file away kind of in the right-hand side here. So it'll show me kind of my three most recent ones. But again, I can save as many different searches as I want to. And then if I wanted to pin it to my dashboard, I also have that option now as well. But these particular searches, like the search engine searches, kind of just casts a very wide net. So we can see here that, it's not just kind of isolating, results to one specific area of the system. So I have some solicitations, some contract files, some just general contract records in my system where that particular word, or in this case, CobbleStone software was found. So again, I can, click on any of these. It'll take me directly to those areas within the system. But again, just kind of a broader way of searching within the tool itself. I also have the ability to perform what are called simple searches. Simple searches, if I were to go into the contract section, I can go to my Find Search Contracts area. Essentially what this will kind of lay out for us is almost like a view all view of my contracts, but that's with a slight caveat because you're only able to see on this screen the contracts that you do have access to. So in my case, I'm a system administrator. I can see absolutely every contract that's stored within my system. However, if, Sally Smith was logged into the system and Sally only had permission to view contracts that she was the contract owner of, Sally might be seeing, and most likely will be seeing, significantly less contract records here, just due to the nature of permissions within the system. But we can come in here when we perform our searches, and in this case, it's just our standard search, where I can come in, select from all of my fields within the system to search through. So if I want to come in and say, okay, I want to take a look at all of my contracts where a yearly meeting is going to be required, I can come in, say that I want to search for where that is equal to yes, and I can see that there's currently 9 contracts in my system at the moment that do require a yearly meeting. So that's one way of performing your kind of simple searches. You also have the option to perform advanced searches, which essentially allows you to set up filters and conditions in the same way that you would on the reporting side of things as well. Where if I want to come in here and I say, okay, I want to look for any contracts that have a budget amount, let's just say greater than or equal to $100,000. And maybe I want it to kind of define that and narrow that down more to in a specific department. I can find my specific department field. I can select that and say, okay, I want to look at contracts over $100,000 in the legal department. And I can continue to kind of, add as many additional filters or statements as I'd like to. But once I apply those filters, it's going to search across all of my contracts within the system that kind of, tick those 2 boxes here. So in that case, just by putting those 2 filters on my search, this is showing me that, hey, there's 11 contracts currently in your system that are over $100,000 that are currently within the legal department. And I can add as many additional filters and conditions as I'd like to, based on whatever fields are available within the system to kind of add to those filters and conditions. Also, what is pretty nice when it comes to the searching within the system is, like I mentioned, with the advanced searching at least, it's very, very similar to the filters and conditions section of your ad hoc reports. So if you find that yourself or your end users are constantly coming in and you're performing like the same advanced searches with the same filters over and over and over again, you can easily go in and build out an ad hoc report that will store those filters on there. So that way, they don't have to go in and, waste time adding, 15 different conditions. They can just easily go to, again, the ad hoc report section, view that specific report, and the information will be displayed and waiting for them there. So that's really the functionality that I wanted to cover with you all today to kind of, again, do a slightly deeper dive into the reporting side of things. And again, take a look at items more from that kind of post-execution side of things, where we can look at how we manage obligations, how we manage deliverables within the system. I don't see that any questions came through while I was going through everything, but if anyone has any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. All right. I don't
Thank you,
see
Kristen. Any questions? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I don't see any questions coming through. I think we have a little bit for Q&A after this. So if any questions do come up, I'll be in the chat. Feel free. But yeah, I appreciate everyone attending. I'll pass it back to Tyler.
Thank you very much, Kristen. Yes, are there any questions for Kristen or about anything else that we've covered today, or anything else about CobbleStone in general? We're more than happy to answer any questions. I'll give it another 10 seconds or so to allow you to type. See, a question came through about Salesforce. I might pass that question over to one of the account managers here who might be able to answer that a little bit better than me. Be Kristen or Mike, are you able to take that question?
Yeah, I was gonna say I can jump in. So essentially when it comes to Salesforce, let's see, specifically how much of the user experience can be done through Salesforce. So CobbleStone is able to integrate with Salesforce. It's probably one of our most common integrations that we perform. So essentially, if you do the majority of the work within Salesforce, and then maybe once it reaches a certain stage in Salesforce, you want it to create a contract record within CobbleStone or a request record, or maybe it creates a company record in CobbleStone. Whatever the case may be, you can essentially set up those defining trigger items where, okay, once it reaches, again, this particular stage, it's going to create a record within CobbleStone. You can also select what of the metadata information or even files that are stored in Salesforce, which ones of those are going to go over into CobbleStone. So that way, everything will be in there. You won't have to kind of do any sort of duplicate data entry. Also, when it comes to integrations, also probably worth mentioning that they can be unilateral or bilateral. So if you want information, if it's updated in CobbleStone, you want it to update within Salesforce, you can absolutely do that. Or if it's like, okay, once the information's in Salesforce, then it's just going to live in CobbleStone. We don't need any updates to happen. So it's just going to go one way from Salesforce to CobbleStone. That can absolutely be set up as well. And I see Trisha also asked, can you do something similar with a Dynamics integration? And the answer to that is also yes. So we can integrate with Microsoft Dynamics. There are some resources on the CobbleStone wiki that you can access that'll give you kind of like sample like field mappings or sample scenarios that we do for integration with Dynamics and also Salesforce. So your CobbleStone account manager, if you don't have one assigned already, they can absolutely reach out to you and provide you that information as well. But we absolutely can with Dynamics also.
Thanks, Kristen. Are there other questions? Okay. Well, if not, well, first, if any other questions do come up, please feel free to put them in the chat still. When a resource from CobbleStone reaches out, you can ask any questions that you wish. But we'll start closing out here. Thank you all very much for joining once again. This is our 2025 CLM Masterclass, and I really hope this has been helpful and illuminating. Again, if you are not currently in contact with an account manager at CobbleStone, you're not a current client, a resource will be reaching out. Again, you can scan that QR code at the bottom of the screen here, or use any of those points of contact to reach us. And yeah, thank you all very much again. Thank you to everyone that presented this morning, and have a great rest of your day and a great weekend, everyone. Take care.